After everyone had settled Patrick's cargo in the hold, Hara sent Gideon to settle in Murphy while she checked in with Alice. Henry was to procure supplies and she was worried as he hadn't checked in with them yet. Alice asked, "What is that?" The clockwork dragon peeked out from her collar and trilled softly. Alice snatched back her finger, which had been close to touching the creature, and held it close to her chest. She asked timidly, "Is it going to bite me?" Gideon entered the bridge and asked, "What have you two in a tizzy?" "I've settled the new guy. He likes the guns, by the way." He hissed when he saw the creature and asked, "Why the heck did you bring that thing here?" Hara, pleased she had ruffled Gideon's feathers, said, "Don't worry. You won't be here long enough for it to annoy you. This is a clockwork dragon." Gideon snarled and the creature bared its teeth back at him. Alice asked Gideon, "Is it dangerous?" Gideon snorted. "Hardly. It is just metal and wires." Hara chuckled. "A little more than that. This is the first successful artificial intelligence. It isn't very smart. More like a bird or something. But it can mimic what it sees. I've only ever seen one before and it had cost the Lord a fortune." She stroked the creature's head. "They wander off if they don't like their master. Isn't that right, little one? You and I are going to be best buds." Gideon huffed and said, "I'm going to my room." Alice and Hara watched him storm off. Alice asked, "Do you think he will be all right?" Hara shrugged and said, "He is just in a snit. He will get over it. Maybe he'll be happy about going home now." Alice shrugged. She didn't look convinced. Hara noticed then Alice prepared to leave the ship as she threw on a coat. Hara frowned and asked, "Are you going somewhere?" Alice said, "Henry isn't back yet." "Yeah, I noticed. I'll go look for him. I just wanted to make sure everything was all right here. Can you monitor the boys? Murphy seems harmless enough." Alice chuckled, "Really? When I saw him, he looked like he was an advertisement for a weapons store." Hara shook her head. "No, he is just a big boy who likes his toys. He didn't even check out my breasts or snicker when I had a large man lying all on top of me." When Alice gave her a shocked look, Hara waved it off and said, "Another story for another day. You can always ask Murphy. He will probably tell you a more elaborate and amusing version." Alice chuckled at the idea and said, "Not to worry, I will keep the home fires burning." Chapter 7. When Hara got to the market area, she saw the vendors were mostly packed up for the day. She frowned. Henry wouldn't have stuck around after the market had closed down for the day. She heard someone yell and some wood crack as someone was thrown into a crate. She ran towards the sound. As Hara rounded the corner into the alley, she was shocked by the tableau. Henry was on the ground and there were two other men fighting on the other end of the alleyway. She had no idea who they were, but it seemed the fight was winding down. Hara approached and helped Henry to his feet. The fight was over by the time she had helped dust off Henry. The man left standing was a big bruiser of a man. He approached Hara, rubbing his jaw where he obviously had been hit. He asked Henry, "You all right?" Henry nodded. "Yeah, thanks." The bruiser offered his hand to her. She took it and asked, "I take it you came to the rescue of my cook?" The man said, "He was lured here by a few men. I thought I would even up the odds." Hara looked past the man and saw there were indeed a few unconscious and groaning men. She pursed her lips, briefly impressed with the man's fighting skills, and said, still looking at the carnage, "Do you need a job?" The man grunted and said, "I need to get out of town." "Does that count?" Hara turned back to him and said, "We can work with that. I'm Captain Hara. You've met Henry." He ran a hand through his hair as he said, "I'm Kale." "Well, Kale, if you are ready, we really should leave." We are heading towards the capital and I hope that gets you far enough away from any of your enemies. Hara said. Kale jumped and she assumed the clockwork dragon had moved to her shoulder. He had been looking right at her and now his eyes were directed to her shoulder. Hara said, "Don't mind him. He doesn't bite." Kale looked skeptical. Henry said, "That is new. Has Gideon seen it?" Hara smiled and turned to Henry. "Yeah, and they hit it off like oil and water." She stroked the dragon and it settled again. Henry eyed it curiously and asked, "Does it just stay there?" "Sure. It seems comfortable. It probably liked being able to see new things. It also had the bonus of annoying people." Hara called out to the rest as she moved from the deck further into the ship. "Hey guys, we are back and we brought a friend." When they got to the bridge, Alice and Murphy were there. Henry said, "Meet Kale. He saved my life." Alice came up behind Hara and whispered, "He looks massive." Kale grinned suggestively. "It is all muscle." He flexed his arm to demonstrate. Henry missed the suggestive tone towards Alice and added excitedly, "Yeah, without him I would have been beaten to a pulp." Hara rolled her eyes and said, "I think you have been living amongst pirates for too long, Henry." She motioned to the ship in general and said, "We'll need a few hands to stoke the fires and trim sails." Henry hesitated, then said, "I'll go make dinner." Hara waved off Henry and said to the others when they gave her a look to see who would have the unwanted chore of shoveling coal, "Well, I'm hungry already and he has had his fair share of ship work lately." Murphy said, "Fine, I'll go flex my muscles. Come along, new guy, I'll show you the ropes." Once they had left, Alice approached Hara and said, "I don't like the new guy, Kale. He looks at me a certain way."